All right, let's roll here. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna start with my first question is one of my favorite questions. So the question is, uh, what's your superpower, or like what's a hardened skill that you've learned and earned being a founder that
Yeah.
other founders could learn from, that other people describe to you as being like your superpower? And I'll go first. So,
Yeah.
because I'm happy to go first. I'm weird like that. So I'll go first. I've got a meeting next week with a client from the UK, and um, the the most important thing that I can continue to do in the meeting with this client is to build trust. I need them
Hmm.
to trust me because I really I want to work with this client, and
Right.
we got a lot of help we can bring them, so that there's like a really good fit with what they do and what they're missing and what we do. And my superpower in that meeting is, it is trust building, but the method that I do it through is empathy. I have like this insane switch that I can dial up and down, not on and off. It's always on, but a dial that I can dial up and down, that I can care deeply about people's problems almost
Hmm.
like on demand. So I've got these folks who are going to be here from the UK. They want to talk strategy. I'm going to be able to go like level 10 empathy on their pain points,
Yep.
which it just changes everything in the meeting. And I find it changes everything in the dynamic of the relationship, where it's like all of a sudden we go from having veils to like, well, let's have a real talk. Like, what's not working? Let's talk about what's not working. Let's have that
Yep.
conversation, guys. And like, that's, so for me, that would be how I answer. Maybe, I mean, I've got a pile of superpowers now because I'm up
Yeah.
there in my career, but like,
Right. Right.
for you, like, what's one?
Well, so really, I kind of have two, right? So I'm going to kind of jump around your question, but they're both extremely frustrating to the people who live life with me, right? Luckily, my
Okay.
wife is an absolute saint, right? But number one, and I actually think that just about every founder needs this to be successful, and that's just being impatient, right? You think of impatience as just like, hey, that's the most frustrating person to be around, but the funny thing about being a founder is you just have to make things happen and make things happen consistently, right? So if you really just have impatience and can understand that you're building a skyscraper out of the little things that you're doing, but just knock them out consistently, then you're going to do great.
So
The other
okay,
one is actually like almost a
I want to
curse.
pause. I want to
Yeah,
pause on the
no,
one. I
please.
want to. Okay, so give me an instance where you've been impatient and it's benefited you. Like it's been the upside. Like recent, like a firsthand experience here.
Oh, I mean, so especially when you're starting a new business, right? Like you have to be so on top of everything and on
Yeah.
top of everybody, right? Like just think about like marketing and content, right? I really probably need to have 30 iterations of a pitch deck before I'm going to get to a point where I'm
Okay.
fundable, right? The only way to get there is being patient, right? So you have to show it to people a little too early. You've got to tell people about it a little too early. You've got to get that feedback where it's like, hey, I don't really understand what you're talking about, right? And build that house out of all of the little pieces that you've brought to it, right?
Yep.
So
Is that something you
it's
did?
hard.
Like, was your
Oh
iterative
yeah,
when you were like, were you iterating that many times on your deck?
absolutely,
And
absolutely,
you
yeah.
were
I
that
mean,
impatient? How did people react around you? Because at that point they could perceive you as just ricocheting and causing damage.
well, at first, I mean, your pitch is garbage, right? No matter how good your idea is,
Wait.
your pitch is garbage.
Let's personalize this. Let's say it aloud. My pitch was garbage. Like
My pitch
first,
was garbage, and you've got to be so impatient about getting to the end of the rainbow that you're
yeah,
okay with it being garbage, right? To get the feedback you want, right? Or you've got to get to product market fit as quickly as possible. What's the best way to do that? Talk to customers, understand what they don't like about you, and
yeah.
understand what your fatal flaws inside of your business plan might be as quickly as possible so you can actually start to build what your customers need and what people want, right?
That's cool. Something I want to try on this as we're chatting, and like it's just popping into my head as I'm listening to the words you're saying. I want to try you talking from your first person. Like, I'm
Okay.
doing this and this is what I do and here's how I'm doing it. And like, I want to hear it from James because other
Yeah.
founders are going to hear from you and they're going to trust you. So when you're
Yeah.
describing your iterative process on the deck, like that was an amazing example. You know, my, what did you say? My pitch was garbage. Like, amazing. That's so personal. And not a
Yeah.
lot of people say that, honestly, man. Not
Yeah.
a lot of people are that real. Not a lot
Yeah.
of people are willing to be that vulnerable. But like diving, so if you want a thumbs up, that's cool. We can give that a shot.
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
And then like, what you're saying to me is something I was chatting with a couple founders. Then we'll switch gears here for a second. A couple
Yeah.
founders about is if you want to be really, really great, like if you want to be exceptional, you got to
Hmm.
be really open to sucking first.
Yep. Yep.
And if you're not, somebody else is willing to be, and they're going to be
Yep.
impatient. They're going to be relentless, and they're going to be like just insanely attention to detail and refinement and all the things that you describe, like 30 iterations on a deck, the pain and
Yeah.
agony
Yeah.
that you put yourself through, that you put others through, like so hard, right? Okay, let's
Well, to that
but you
point,
had a
one thing
second
I
thing
will
too. You
say.
yeah, go.
Oh, yeah, well, I will say, you got to look good with egg on your face, right? Like, think of the best technologies that you've ever, or that have happened in the recent era, right? Like when OpenAI came out with ChatGPT, it really wasn't that impressive
Yeah.
until 3 or 4 years of people using it. The full self-driving on my Tesla was like, hey, this thing's going to kill me until just recently, right? But being able to get it out to market quickly and being able to get the feedback that they needed to make that product fantastic is what they did, right? And both of those founders are people who aren't worried about looking bad, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes a little too much, but that's an important trait to have, right? In making a successful business. But
Yeah, like what's the saying? Like build in public and it's okay.
yep,
Just
yep,
build in public. Like no problem. It's all good.
100%, one hundred
Yeah.
percent. Now, my other superpower
Yeah,
is
let's hear it.
almost more frustrating than impatience.
Okay.
Um, but that, and it's almost kind of a family curse, right? That we used to always make fun of my mom for having, but it's the ability to just have extreme focus, almost to the point where you can tune everything out, right?
Mm.
And my wife absolutely goes insane when I do this, right? But she'll have a full conversation with me and I wasn't really listening because I'm so focused on something else, right? So you just have to get to a point where you can just focus on all that matters, put your phone away, turn off your notifications, not respond to anybody, and really just get cooking, you know? So that's what I would say my other superpower is. It's really tough when you're trying to message me or text me and I haven't responded in 2 weeks, but it's really, really important in building a success, you know?
Yeah, that's wild. And like there's something that just like resonates with me there. So the thing is like, okay, so Cardi's gonna pause something here for us.
Okay.
There we go. So there's something that deeply resonates. I get what you're saying, and like a very personal thing for me, and I'd love to hear if there's something similar for you or not.
Yes.
So like one of my best friends lives in Los Angeles, and I haven't I haven't seen this guy. I haven't been in person with him for almost a year, and we're like really close. My other best friend lives in London, England,
Mhm.
and I haven't seen these guys because I've been in build mode for like 4 years, not like 2 years, like 4 years, and I
Yeah.
got a family, and I have priorities, and it's not that they're not a priority, but I couldn't find a way to make their lives and my lives fit together, so that relationship has been sacrificed in my world, and it really, I mean, it bothers me because we're really close, and like one of the guys is in my wedding, like he stood up for me at my wedding,
Mhm.
and I would consider him like a godparent to my kids,
Yeah.
but I got to build, and I can't not build because I don't think this opportunity that is in front of me and what I'm building is going to appear again, and the conditions are favorable to what I'm doing, to the point where like if I don't build, I am doing disservice to my family. And like the trade that I make with myself when I go into, as you described it, like ultra focus mode. You're like ultra, like I'm unavailable to other things is basically what I hear you saying, because you're so on the point at that moment. Is like I don't know if you make a deal with yourself. I make deals with myself. So I'll be like, I will sacrifice time with my friend's name is Bill. I will sacrifice
Mhm.
quality time with my best friend Bill, because we're gonna be on a beach, in a couple of years together, and I'm gonna pay for the whole trip, and we're gonna
Right,
be able to
right.
see each other a lot, or like things like that. Where I don't know. Do you make deals with yourself, or like how
Yeah,
do
no,
you?
and I mean, I think there's kind of there's also things that fall into not going to make a deal on that, right? Like I have young
Yes.
kids, and it's like I am absolutely not going to be so focused that I miss them growing up, right? But no, absolutely. I mean, you know, friend and the best friends will be there when you're ready,
They
right?
are,
And they
and they
are,
get it. They're
right?
supportive. Like for me, they're
They're supportive.
supportive. They
They're
got my back.
supportive. They understand if they don't get texted back immediately because you're
Yep.
cooking, right?
That's
You're
it.
the chef, right?
That's
So
it.
yeah, yeah. But it's also
Uh,
important to remember, what matters more, right? And don't miss the things that you don't want to miss, right?
oh,
But
absolutely. Yeah, I like. Well,
agreed.
what you just highlighted is important to me. There's things where I'm not going to barter, or I'm not going to
Right,
trade.
right.
Like my daughter's graduation, I'm not missing that for the world.
No, no way. No way.
Right? Like, ain't happening. Or
No
in my
ways.
case, the ability to embarrass my daughter at gymnastics class, when I
Yeah.
attempt something randomly, which I do every from time to
The
time.
the back spring
Yeah,
backflip or
yeah,
whatever.
I
Yeah.
do weird stuff like that. Yeah, totally. Okay, let's dive in, man. Let's change
Yeah.
into. I want to hear. Without, I got a challenge for you. Okay, I would love for you to describe what what problem you're working on without talking about your company's name. Like, so don't go into promo mode here for a second. Tell me about the complex problem that you've zeroed in on, where you're cooking as you describe it, like your focal point, the problem.
Yeah. So I'll try not to say the name. Mostly because the name kind of actually includes one of the things we do. But um, so one of the funny things about AI is like we're really just on the precipice of it, right? Like I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's one of the weird technologies where we fully see what's going on and know that that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? For the most part, anything
Okay.
that was really disruptive or changing, world changing, we didn't see coming, right?
Mm,
This we see coming, right? And one of the major bottlenecks or barriers to really get to the point where AI is just in everything we do in life is, believe it or not, the chips, no matter what CNBC says, it's relatively easy to get your NVIDIA chips if you have enough money for them, right?
right.
The supply chains are okay. Energy becomes the real barrier to entry when it
Yeah.
comes to scaling AI, right? And it's not always production, right? Sometimes you have plenty of production of it. It's transformers, it's slow moving industries, it's utilities, it's all that type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much so to the extent that you go to Northern Virginia to try to put in another data center and you'll get picketed. It won't happen, right?
Mm,
So
okay.
basically, what we do is AI uses obviously a lot of energy. A lot of that energy is kind of being utilized to cool the chips, right? Or is essentially being put into heat, right? And then you've got to use cooling systems and energy to be able to chill those chips, right? And our whole idea was, what if you actually use the heat, right? There's a lot of things that use heat out there. There's a lot of different applications for heat. Why not use that as a resource instead of just trying to fight yourself with cooling systems, right?
Okay, so
So
let me let I'm pretty much with you. I need to go
yeah,
back in time for a second. Are
yeah,
you Am I to understand from what you're saying, like America does not have enough energy to run the AI systems that it wants to put in place, that are inevitably not want, that are inevitably on approach. Are we in
Yeah.
a, are we in a, we're in a debt position on that right now, energy production wise?
Um, so let me put it this way, right? Like
Okay.
the grid, and don't quote me on the exact numbers, right? But the absolute most that the grid normally grows is something like 1 to 2%,
I've
right?
heard this. Yes.
And with data centers, growth, the CAGR for data centers is like 40%, right? So you're kind of putting this extremely fast growing, super energy intensive uh, market right alongside slash determinant on a really, really slow moving market, right? So I mean, the as a whole, do we produce enough energy to do it? Probably. But in places like Dallas, where I live, in places like Northern Virginia, are you absolutely on the verge of meltdowns in certain situations? Yes, right. Like in Dallas,
Right.
um we had this just extreme freeze for a week, right? And they were basically having to turn off half of the grid, turn off this neighborhood, turn off that neighborhood, just to keep the whole system from going down, right?
Okay.
And a lot of that stems from you know, Bitcoin mining companies, new data centers, all of these
Yep.
different super, super high energy uh, markets coming into the region, right? So it's sort of a regional type thing, but um, it's more about the allocation of energy and more about the transformers than it is actually the production of energy itself, right?
Yeah, I heard. I mean, the most famous guy in the space, Altman, he was on
Yeah.
his brother has a podcast. I think it's called
Mhm.
Untapped or Uncapped or something like that. They were talking about this a little bit last week, and Altman, worth looking up because it may be quotable in some of your
Yeah.
blog posts and stuff that you do. And he was saying like in the future there will be a lot more energy production because there needs to be. And I didn't seek
Mhm.
this out. I just kind of I heard it before I started chatting with you, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure that's reliant on this. Regional problems do exist. Grid, problems exist. So if nothing changes, the problem gets worse. Like you were saying, brownouts, rolling cycles that have to like balance demand and supply, basically.
Yep.
So that's the problem that you're trying. Is that the problem? Like, is that the villain in your story?
That's I guess that's the villain backstory behind the solution,
I mean,
right?
stories are more fun with a villain, right? I mean, way more fun.
Right. Always. You've got to have a villain or there's no business, right? But basically what the idea is hey, instead of trying to build more generation, instead of trying to manipulate or grow infrastructure at an extreme scale, instead, you're doing two for one processes here, right? You're utilizing systems that were already utilizing energy to heat, right? And instead, you're using that for compute, right? And utilizing the waste product from that compute to heat,
So
right? So you're
okay,
basically getting a two for one process out of the deal.
show me the elegant solution then, because you describe an elegant solution. It's high science. You're boiling it
Hmm.
down for me, thanks. And
Hmm.
I need it. What
Yeah.
what is the elegant solution? How do you describe
What,
it? Do it one more
what
time.
water heating, right?
Okay.
Is ideal, right? So you have a really, really focused form of energy, right? So just think of it like this from top to bottom, right?
Okay.
You have a mini data center, right, or something along those lines, right? Those chips get extremely hot. They
Yep.
use liquid cooling to be able to cool those chips. Now just run that liquid loop into your hot water heating system, and you've dissipated all the heat into what is basically a thermal battery that will withstand endless amounts of heat, depending on how much demand you have for that water. Right.
And who's the winner in this situation? Is it the facilities owner? Is it the grid? Is it the like? It's not. You're not talking
Everybody.
residential. You're talking commercial at this point.
So residential too, for example,
Okay.
I've got one in my house right now, but everybody wins, right? So you now have compute infrastructure in places you couldn't put it before because, of the grid, right? You now have a hotel or a industrial building that now has a revenue generating asset in their basement, right? And the byproduct from that whole system is a hot water that they essentially need to operate, right? So it's kind of a win for everybody.
Are you suggesting? Well, I think I misunderstood something, and the light bulb just went off for me.
Yeah,
That the compute centers or the data centers could be in different places than they currently are, based on what you're enabling. That you're
yeah,
taking spaces that have been not considered for this kind of utilization. You're saying, hey, we can actually use these spaces to build data centers, compute centers, things like that, because we have a place to. Okay.
dissipate the heat,
So how's it work
right?
in your
So
home? What's the deal in your home? How's that setup
So
work?
I've got one that's much smaller scale in my home. It looks and operates just like a normal hot water heater. It just being way cooler
Okay.
looking, right? It's black.
Yeah.
But basically the compute generates heat on the top of it. We utilize the compute for AI, or we rent out the compute, and it heats the water, right? So at the end of the day, what the business model turns into is, hey, I replace your hot water heater in your home. I now have an edge server in your home, and you, I can pay you for the time that I use on it, or you can use the time on it as those use cases come about, right?
So it's like ultra decentralized distributed compute
Absolutely,
in
exactly.
micro pieces, that the sum of those pieces could be tremendous.
Mhm.
And like
100%.
you talk about giving America an advantage or an edge, pun intended, over any other country that's competing on AI, or anyone that's trying to work on the edge of compute, which is really where it's the frontier right now, right? It's where it's all
Hmm.
happening. Man, that's wild. So it
Yeah.
does the which market are you going after the most, like residential
Oh,
or?
so I mean, really, commercial makes the most sense today, and there's
Okay.
various reasons for that, right? So, one of our friends at NVIDIA told us basically training costs money, inferencing makes money, right?
Hmm.
And unfortunately, today we live in a world where training is kind of what you need to do, right? Your LLMs or your large
Yep.
language models are just too big, right? And they're too complicated and too intensive to do,
Sure.
on edge devices, right? So you kind of have to build out that ecosystem first. And then once you get that to scale, then you're in a place to put those edge nodes in everybody's house, right? And then it's doing things like smart home stuff. It's doing things like generating content for you when we get to a point where
Right.
customized content becomes a thing, and you've got all that right there, right? So it's almost like a hub and spoke type model that you sort of build out. You obviously want to start with the hub first before you build the spokes, but yeah,
Totally wild.
yeah, with the industrial sort of version of it, you're definitely focusing on a market that already exists. With the residential version of it, you're probably a little early on what that market and what that compute turns into, you know.
And do you sell through distributors or like utilities, or like what's your model? Like what's your go
Yeah,
to
so
market?
a little bit of all of that. Most of what we do today is B2B, right? So, cold calls and picking up phones and finding the right people, taking them to dinner. But we do have some partnerships identified with utilities to help kind of augment that whole process, and make it easier to compensate you for the time we're using on your compute. But
Okay.
yeah, the sky's kind of the limit. There's a million business models you could potentially do, but obviously B2B gets you the most reach with the fewest ad spend, right? So that's kind of where we focused our time to start.
Sales velocity through
Yeah,
cranking the telephone, right?
yeah,
Um, if you had like who, if I got two questions for you, they're both related to customers. If you
yeah.
could, you know, if you could wave a magic wand and have as many of the right customers as you wanted, who was like the ideal customer if you could spec them out, like this criteria, this criteria, this criteria, like top three criteria of the best customer? Who are they?
Yeah, so pretty simply, I would just say it's a direct to consumer AI market, right? So if that's open AI, right? If that becomes Disney, right? As you get into customized content, but somebody who delivers something directly to to somebody who's a homeowner or who has a hot water heater in their house, right?
That's
And they
your ideal customer?
that's my ideal customer, right? Because then they can train on our larger systems, and they can actually utilize our smaller systems to improve their customer experience on their end, right? So at the end of the day, that is my ideal customer for compute. And when it comes to like, hey, where do I put it? Whose homes do I put it in? I mean, if the value prop's good enough, you that's not a problem, right? If it's, hey, I'm now saving you, if you wanted to generate a video on AWS, it would have cost you 25 grand. Hey, this hot water heater is a fraction of that cost, and you could do all of the videos you want, right? That part of the sales piece has been relatively easy for us, knock on wood, right? Is actually figuring out the homeowner, right? And the homeowner is interesting because, so what brand of hot water heater do you have in your house? Do you know?
I think it's a Reese or something like that.
Okay, you might be the first person who's actually answered that question for me. Right. But for the most part, there's no brand loyalty, right?
Yeah.
And there's no real it's a super old, super,
Dusty,
whatever your
scary
plumber
thing.
happens to do when your hot water heater
Yeah.
blows up or whatever they have in the truck is what you put in. Right. So, if you build a brand around a hot water heater, you're kind of in a pretty sweet little market that has a pretty big moat to it, you know?
Completely wild. I think it's interesting. Okay, so my second question for you then is about customers. If you
Yeah.
could give one piece of advice to a customer who's out there, you've never met them, but they happen upon you, dropping science, and they're like, I need to learn from this guy. What free advice would you give them on what you
Free
do?
advice to a customer.
Yeah, like let's say somebody
So
from Disney's listening, or somebody, and they're like, I'm picking up what this guy's putting down. What advice would you give them, aside from phone me?
Oh, I would, yeah, I would just say something along the lines of, hey, our world is changing significantly. How we deliver things to end users kind of has to be totally reinvented. And don't be worried about thinking outside the box to that, right? Like, yes, you're going to talk to all your engineers, and they're going to be like, hey, we work in
Yeah.
AWS EC2 platforms, right? But really, at the end of the day, that market kind of needs to be turned on its head to operate with Gen AI and to operate with the things that are coming down the pike, right? So don't be scared of edge analytics. Don't be scared of of devices that aren't behind a barbed wire fence, right? Because we're going to need all that we can actually use to make this work at the end of the day, you know?
I mean, amen to that. And it sounds like the whole industry is tilting towards more open innovation. Like the way you're describing people's behavioral shift, that you're like, hey, I'm encouraging you to be more collaborative and a little more experimental, not get all
Mhm.
the answers in day one. Like, we're gonna learn. It's gonna be iterative.
Yep.
Crazy word, you know.
Yep. And be impatient about it,
And be
right?
impatient. Yeah, there's something we were chatting about at the beginning. And by the way, footnote: the only reason why I know the name of my water heater is because I'm also a farm boy, so I know
Okay.
all the mechanical items in my house. I know all
Roger
of them.
that. Roger that. Yeah, you
Um,
probably tinker with them too much and break them. That's what I always do.
I do. Yeah, I make the joke. I get to play with them until I pay someone to come and do it properly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So when we were chatting offline, this phrase came up that I wanted to zero in on: a liability into an asset, and you had a lot to say on that. Like, what's your point of view there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think some of the best ideas really do take something that looks like it's not worth anything and make it worth something, right? Um, even back the turn of the century, right? Like, crude oil used to be a nuisance, until somebody decided that there's quite a bit we could do with crude oil, right?
Yeah.
So, one of the key things I like to focus on is, really try to turn something on its head, right? Take the whole picture and really try to identify what in that picture is of value. And sometimes it's not what you think it is, right? Not
Mm.
everything that glitters is gold, right? So sometimes it takes a totally different look at things to really figure out what that is. In our case, it happens to be waste heat, right? But who knows where the next liability that could be turned into assets could potentially come from.
I dig that. I like that. I appreciate that. Two two other ones for you, then we'll wind down
Yeah.
here. So the one is like for water, for
Mhm.
you, what do you think is the next milestone that you're like closing in on, or the one on the horizon where you're like, I am impatiently chomping to get at this thing? For
Oh yeah,
what's the next
yeah.
one? Next
Oh,
milestone.
so we're doing our first hotel deployment, right?
Okay.
Which I'm very extremely excited about because it's at kind of the a Dallas landmark of ours, which is the Reunion Tower, which is the ball if you look at the Dallas skyline,
Oh,
right?
very cool.
But I'm obviously very impatient about it. So we've totally had it pegged for kind of the end of this year to do it, right? But that doesn't mean that I am not impatient about it, right? Even with it being 5 6 months away, right? We're I'm still like, hey, we need to get it done. We need to march to it, right? But that's
Yeah.
kind of the big milestone we're working on right now. And then obviously we're putting more prototypes in homes as far as our consumer stuff is concerned, but that's moving along pretty nicely.
Awesome. And then in terms of this is a tough one. In terms of what you don't know. So you think of that milestone, you think of those homes, you think of the edge that you're describing to me.
Hmm.
What what don't you know in your founder mastery yet that you want to master or need to master next to take things to the next level?
Oh yeah. No, I mean I've never built a consumer grade appliance before, right?
Okay.
So I have definitely not dealt with all of the roadblocks that happen there, right? Once you need to get to a point where, hey, my bomb needs to be way cheaper than it is, right? And starting to source from places that maybe you don't, you wouldn't pick up the phone and call, right? Type of situation is totally kind of a blind spot for me, right? As we
Mm.
move forward, but there's a lot of people that know that stuff, and so one thing I like to say is Drake once said, "Toronto, there you go, right? I'm
Okay.
a pop star, not a doctor," right? In one
Right.
of his songs, right? And he was referring to something slightly different. About he sings songs, he doesn't sell drugs, right? But how I interpret that is, I'm good at what I'm good at. You're good at what you're good at. Let's do that, right? I'm a pop
Nice.
star, not a doctor, right? So there's a lot of people who are great at that type of stuff. I've kind of surrounded myself with those types of folks who do understand logistics and to do understand sourcing and all of that type of stuff. So, am I all that worried about it? Not necessarily, but do I know that there's going to be a huge learning curve? There's going to be mistakes made? Absolutely. Right.
Nice. And are there second to last question, then we'll wrap up on time. Are there any what types of other CEOs would you want to spend time with if you're spending time with other CEOs learning?
Oh, everybody. I mean, it's kind of funny
Too
because you
generic. What a
have,
cop out. Come on, be picky.
so everybody has their own experiences, and I like to say that
Amen.
a lot of people give you great advice at the complete wrong time just because they're in a completely different spot as you are,
I love
right?
it.
But talking to founders, talking to CEOs, I mean, you learn so much just from their journey, and one of the best things is it teaches you that your problems aren't that original. Like, hey, they're having the exact same problem you are, right?
Yep.
Just because they look better, right, doesn't mean that they're not having the same problems in life as you are. But as far as like who that is or what that is, I mean, uh, I, ju- I just like cool people, right? I don't really care about what industry you're in. I've been in a lot of different industries. I've been in the defense industry. I've been in, a lot of different stuff over the years. So just cool people who are open about what type of mistakes they've made, what type of mistakes they're making, and can help you on your journey, if nothing else, but to understand that your life is not any worse than theirs. You know what you mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm way more interested in the mistakes than the wins personally.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Please, right?
100%. Well, and one of
Yeah.
the funny things is I mean, like when you do talk to somebody who's kind of made it, right, or sold their company for an excessive amount of money,
Yeah.
they're really romantic about it, right? And it's
They
like
get that way, don't they?
they get that way, and you're like, I know it wasn't that great, right? I know that journey was tough. Jensen Wong has a video about like
Okay.
you've probably seen it, but it's like somebody asks him the question of if you started NVIDIA again today, what would you do differently? And he said, I wouldn't do it.
I
Right.
wouldn't do
And I was like,
it.
that's the most real thing that a founder has ever said. Right.
Yeah.
Because, he's not romantic about it. He understands how tough it was. He understands, those days where he didn't answer his friend's phone call. Right. And, even though he's extremely successful, he wouldn't have done it at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you know?
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, I'm glad you're
Yeah.
doing it. I love what you were sharing there. Um, to end, where could and can and should people find and follow you or Water to keep up with everything you're building? Like, is there a blog where you want people to dial in and like check it out? Or
Yeah.
no, are you a LinkedIn guy? Like, what's the
I'm a
bias?
LinkedIn guy, so if you
Okay.
look me up on LinkedIn, it's a good place to add me. And then watter.com is a great place to start. We've got
Okay.
Twitter, we've got Facebook, we've got all that jazz, right? And a lot of good content comes out of that. So that'd be the place to find us for sure.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, James.